Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 19 of the Fifth Maple Board Game Podcast. We're a group of diverse friends who offer our takes on the latest and greatest board games to hit our table. I'm your host, Daniela, the Goofy Noob, and I'm joined today by the Collector.
Hey, guys, this is David.
And the Intellectual Introvert.
Hi, everyone, this is Chris.
And the Deluxeifier.
Hello, everybody, it's Pete.
All right, you guys may already know that we, the Fifth Meeple, we play a lot of higher count play games, but we also have those weeks where someone's missing, and we often take those opportunities to play those games that aren't built for our normal player count. Today, we're going to dive into a couple of games that do not go up to 5 players, but which we do enjoy playing when one of our crew is missing. Therefore, in today's episode, we tackle some treacherous terrain with 2 games that skillfully combine deck building and worker placement. We'll start our journey by daring the dry desert, sidestepping sandworms, and scraping out Solari in Dune Imperium. Then it's an archaeological island adventure, digging in dirt and trampling through temples as we expertly explore the lost ruins of Arnak. And finally, because we just can't help ourselves, we'll have a deck measuring contest as we face them off against each other in our ultimate showdown in the Battle of the Funnest. But before we face the barren desert with the Bene Gesserit, David, what is our topic of discussion for today?
Okay, I got a good one for us today. So we play a lot of games here, and a lot of the games sometimes, has a scoreboard. Not all the games have a scoreboard, but when they do, what do you guys feel about calling out the leader? As in, like, hey, I'm going to point it out. Somebody's winning, point it out to the rest of the crew. Maybe they don't notice, but you notice. And you're like, hey, guys, let's go get this person because they're in the lead. How do you feel about when people do that? Do you do that? What is your take on it?
I want to say I don't do it, but I can think back to a couple of times when I have. I don't like when it's done to me.
Yeah.
I feel like I do it when I feel like maybe it's really critical that, hey, there's a turning point in this game. If someone doesn't pay attention, then this game could be lost. Or if I think someone might be targeting me, and so then I'll just kind of jokingly point out, hey, I'm not ahead, things like that. So I'd like to say I don't do it, but yeah, every once in a while I do.
Well, I kind of like the table talk, especially if the game warrants it. There are a lot of times where multiple people have to gang up on one person to really knock them down. And one of the games that we're going to be talking about is going to be that. We'll get into that in a little bit later. But I enjoy it. I think it's okay. It's another one of those that etiquette thing that you want to make sure that everybody's okay with it. I think that's really important. Daniela, you're shaking your head over there.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure you're ever going to find a table that everybody's okay with it. But in the same token, I agree. We are going to talk about that today because that is something that I kind of read on some of the forums that people were talking about with Dune. But we had played a game recently that we're going to be talking about in an upcoming episode, so I don't want to give that away. But we were playing that all together here recently, and the entire game, so-and-so's moving up on this track. Look who's doing this. Look who's doing that. So I think it is fun. It's a little thing that people can use to go after a person in the game. Or I know there's another game that we played, Chris, over at Pete's house one day, and it was like, oh, God, please just go up high on that score track and end this game, right? So sometimes you go after those people, and other times you don't. So I don't know. David, what do you think?
Yeah, I think this is an tough topic for a lot of different reasons, but I could see, I played at tables where I feel like people definitely get frustrated, or you could see them getting annoyed because you're calling them out. Maybe it's you, maybe it's somebody else that's, being called out on the table. And it's not always a great feeling if you're the one in the lead, especially if nobody else kind of recognized it at the table. I think, though, it does, like kind of Chris and Pete were saying, it depends on the game, because in certain games, if you don't call that out, there could be, the game kind of calls for the rest of the people or the rest of the players to actually try to go after the leader. That's how some of these games are played, especially like area control games and stuff like that. So, in some ways I can see it. In other ways, I think it's a tough thing, but I'm always okay with it, I guess, personally.
Yeah, that's interesting. And I think one of the things today that we're going to talk about is I don't know if I'm giving away my secrets when I play. I really try to lay back, though, and not point some of that stuff out sometimes, because there are cards, game ender, right, that can shoot you up on that track or not. And whether you have those or not, that depends on how I play the game. If I have none of those games and I'm trailing behind, I'm calling people out, right? If I have game ender cards, I'm trying to lay back and not, okay, let them go. They think they're in the lead, and then bam, you hit them with the double points or something.
Yeah, the one other thing I'll add is there are some games where there's a lot of scoring after the game ends. So being in the lead necessarily doesn't mean you're going to be the winner of it. So again, it's a little bit game dependent, I think, also that you got to keep in mind when you're doing that, because as Daniela said, there are games where 50% of your scoring's after the fact, so it's really hard to call them out on those. But if you're playing a game where it's the first one to 10, you got to get there before them, whatever it takes.
Yeah, absolutely. And hopefully you have enough turns to end the game.
Oh yeah,
that should be another topic, because that's still
don't worry, it's
that's
coming
waging on me, really. So. All right, guys. Awesome. Thank you so much, David. That was really good. So let us know your guys' opinions on what you guys think of scoreboard call-outs. We'd love to know what all of you are out there have to say about that. But if you can let us know, send us an email at thefifthmeeple@gmail.com. We'd love to have you guys follow us on Instagram, Facebook, or on BGG, or check out our website at thefifthmeeple.com. And before you forget, why not take a second to hit the subscribe button so you never miss one of our shows. And if you want to help us grow, one of the best ways to leave us a review is on Apple Podcasts. If you do, we might just read it on a future show. And today we actually have one we'd like to read. We got this through Podbean, and David's going to hit it up.
Yeah, so this person, their screen name or whatever they're using, I think it's called Quatifa. So if I got that wrong, please let me know. But she said, great show. Looking forward to trying some of the games that I hadn't played yet. So appreciate that really great review on there. That was about a 5-star comment. So, we'd love for you guys to review us, especially if you have Apple Podcasts or something where, the reviews count, because it does help to go into promoting the show and going up on search. So we appreciate that. And thank you, Quatifa.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you guys for all the engagement you've been giving us and all for listening. Well, it looks like the High Council is assembling, but when we return, we'll get into our thoughts on Dune Imperium.
Dune Imperium is a 1-to-4 player deck building worker placement game that ships you off to the planet Arrakis, battling for control of the spice melange through alliances and the occasional bit of conflict. Each player represents the leader of one of the great houses of the Landsrod, possessing slightly asymmetric capabilities from the others. You start the game with a small deck of 10 cards, 2 agents, 12 troops for combat, and 1 measly drop of water. Each round starts by revealing a conflict card that defines what players will be battling for. Players then draw 5 cards from their deck and take turns in sequential order. On your turn, you will play 1 card from your hand and place an agent on an unoccupied space with a symbol matching one of those shown on the card you played. The cards often, but not always, grant an action. Your agent space also grants a benefit in the form of resources, spice, money, or water, intrigue cards for future benefit, drawing more cards into your hand, gaining influence with various factions, or placing troops into your garrison reserve or into battle, as well as several other unique benefits. If you have no agents left or prefer not to place one, you reveal the balance of your hand using the resulting secondary benefit to purchase additional cards for your deck or increase your combat strength. Once all players have revealed their hands, combat ensues, comparing strengths of the troops placed into battle to see who earns the round's bonuses. Players earn victory points through combat rewards by forming alliances with the 4 major factions and through Intrigue and Imperium cards. Play continues until at least one player reaches 10 victory points or for a maximum of 10 rounds, after which the player with the most points rules the universe. Dune Imperium was designed by Paul Denon and was first published in 2020 by Direwolf.
All right, awesome. Thank you for that overview, Chris. All right, so let's rally the troops here. What for you guys are some of the spiciest, which means good, parts of Dune Imperium?
For me, I like the fact that in the plays that I've had, there seem to be multiple paths to victory. There's not a clear, you got to do this in order to win. I know every time I play, I'm trying something different. David always plays that way, where he'll explore it some other way. And I haven't, at least I haven't, I don't know about others as you're playing that. I have yet to see, hey, you have to go this way, that way always wins. You can go different ways, and it's pretty well balanced.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, Chris, because I've played this game a few times now, and I don't disagree. Once you understand some of the cards that you have, whether it's intrigue, whether it's plots, whether it's combat, you're kind of going and focusing your goals based on what you have in your hand. And so that can be different for so many people at the table. And it's a little hard to understand, I think, at some point, which is a good thing, what everybody seated around the table might be doing or what they might be trying to do with their points.
Yeah, one of the things I really like about it is the combat system. I think it works well. It's not direct combat where you're really targeting somebody. You're throwing all these troops into an area and doing some fighting, and whoever comes out on top gets the better of those cards, which is nice. So, and during that turn, you can decide how much do you want to put in. Do you want to hold back some of your troops for maybe the next event? You don't know what that is, but that's one of the things I really like about the combat system. It's just smooth. It's real easy to calculate. There's a little bit of hidden information, as Danielle mentioned about, there could be some combat cards that come out too, which can change the outcome of the game. So I like that quite a bit. David, what do you have on your side? What do you think?
Yeah, to me, I think Dune Imperium, what it does best is it just combines like different mechanisms in a way that I feel like is really flawless. It takes worker placement and takes deck building, and with this little combat that Pete was talking about, this system, and it combines all three of them in a way where I feel like everything's really tight. There's not a piece that I can see that was just added on. Everything kind of makes sense. And a lot of times when you play a game with different mechanisms, sometimes you come out of a game and you're like, I don't know if those all actually work together. Maybe they were just trying to throw some stuff in there. But when I think what they did here with Dune Imperium is like, I feel like it's really good. Like Chris was saying, like I've seen multiple people win different ways. It feels tight in a lot of different places where it should feel tight. And I think that's always a good sign. So just kind of the mesh up of all the different mechanisms, I feel like really stand out to make this game really something unique.
Yeah, that's exactly what one of my next bullet point was not just that they have those two things, but the way they work together. The cards are tied to where you can put your worker, and you kind of have to find that balance of, I want to play this card and get this benefit, but then I can't go to this spot, or vice versa. Reminds me a little bit of Underwater Cities, where you're going to get a certain action, but you only get your card benefit if you go to a certain area. This is a little different, and I think even a little better, to where you can't go to a certain place unless you play a matching card with that. And so I really like the way that they did it. I thought they did it quite well.
Yeah, and I think overall for me, I think like the tension caused by the space taking, where you can only do a couple things. We had vocally said numerous times when we were playing, that's where I wanted to go, and you kind of get mad. But I actually really like that, because it's reminds me a little bit of Lords of Waterdeep, when you want to do a certain action and you got to wait a whole other round if that, whether your meep or whatever is on the space and you can't do that. But I kind of like that in a game where, my plans are ruined this round. What am I going to do now to kind of figure that out? Or the card you want in your hand, in your deck, didn't come out. There was a game we all knew whose round was going to be horrible and bad, because we just kept saying, that's not the cards I wanted, I needed. So maybe we need to control that vocally a little bit more.
Yeah, speaking about the cards, that's one of the other things I do enjoy about this game. You can actually go different ways with the cards. There are the Fremen cards. There are other cards that work together real well. And when you're drafting, it's important to pay attention to what's out there. I know the last game that I played, my leader really gave me the power to go in and fight. So I was actively grabbing every fight card that I could get and just crawl up, as we talked earlier about, different paths to victory. So I think that's really a good thing that this game did.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, just to kind of jump on what Pete's saying, that's one of the highlights for me too, is just the different leader cards and just the variable abilities. The times that we played, I know we played with an expansion once, I just love the variety of the different leaders and kind of what you can do. And I feel like they play very differently. You play the game, you kind of tailor it a little bit towards your leader, obviously, because they have special powers and effects they can do. But I feel like each one, at least so far that I've seen, isn't really overpowered. It balances out in the end, which I really like. But then I also get to kind of delve and lean into that kind of game style. I know Pete, last time when he played with us, I think you had the war guy or something, and you were just killing everybody in battles. And
yeah,
I think
it was
I couldn't
fun.
stop you. So yeah.
Yeah, I also like that things to me really seem to ramp up at the end. I remember getting some advice at one of our game design get-togethers that, hey, a game shouldn't feel the same at the beginning as it does at the end. There should kind of be how it feels beginning, in the middle, at the end, and things are different as it goes along. And I feel like Dune does that pretty well too, where the first couple rounds, who do I really care who wins a combat? Maybe there's one that, I need some money, and so I'm going to go after it. But when you get into that level 3 conflict card, and all of a sudden VPs are coming out, or even the 2 VPs for winning this one, now it's real and it's on, and you might have to be cutthroat and really go after somebody, because if you don't get that, it could be over if it's a 2 or 4 point swing that way.
So that's an interesting thing that I wanted to bring up for the group. I was reading a couple things where people said they felt like 3/4 through the game they knew who was going to win. I don't personally feel like that was the case when we played. I like to kind of know what you guys think, because I actually like this part of the game that you don't know generally. You know who might hit the 10 first in that line, but you don't really know who might win
I would say I feel like someone's got an advantage sometimes. I don't know if I ever feel like anyone's going to win. And if you do, call them out and point it out to everybody so that they can all go after him. But I don't know that I feel that way. But I feel like I can see a situation where, okay, now I feel like if that guy wins that conflict card, it's probably over. But I didn't feel like any of our games really got to where it was a foregone conclusion.
Yeah, I've played games before where, I walloped on somebody. I got up to 10, and I think the closest person was like at 6. And really that came down to card draw, which is another important part of deck building. If you can get a good card draw engine going on, you just have the world at your hands, and it feels pretty good. But that goes back again to, that table talk. If I'm running away with it, people should be beating me down, ganging up on me, and I'm fine with that.
You hear it. You heard what Pete said. He's fine with that.
That's on record.
Bring it on.
And I had this as one of my negatives, but I'm going to switch it to a positive because I wasn't sure where to put it. And that is that deck size matters. And you just kind of alluded to that you don't want to necessarily buy a card every time you get a chance to.
Right.
I know something I've learned the more I've played it is, hey, there are times I've got these, whatever you call them, the points at the end, and you can buy cards. And I'm like, I don't want to buy anything. Either it doesn't sync up well, or I feel like my deck's big enough, and if I get it too big, then I'm never going to see the things.
I agree with you, Chris. I watched you on the second game build your deck, and I thought then going into my third game, I said, I'm going to take that note and make sure I'm not picking up these wasteful cards that when I'm playing them, there's nothing on them. There's no space to move to. There's just maybe a sword on there or something that could help me in battle, but I wasn't going for the conflicts in the last game we played, so I definitely picked up on that, and I think that's super important too.
You have to get past the feeling of, I'm not getting something here, to, I'm not falling for the trap.
Yeah. Forego your hands sometimes and just lay it down and do your reveal.
Yeah, I think it's important though. This really is a deck builder at the heart of it. And I've played the game, I think it was the 2 games before that. I didn't have any cards to go up any of the alliance tracks, and I felt like I was hampered big time.
Yes.
The only thing I could do was go out and do battling, and I really didn't do well that game because early on I really wasn't paying attention. You have some start cards which give you some flexibility to go there, but you do need to watch that market and pick up cards that are really going to benefit you and give you some flexibility.
All right, so what about the downsides of Dune? One of the things I want to do is split one of my likes and dislikes because there's 2 different things on this that I kind of want your guys' opinion on as well. So with the theme kind of overall, I know we're going to be grading this later, but theme-wise, I do feel like this was a little thematic, but then there was another side that I didn't really like. So what I do like is that the water and the spice in some of these areas are really hard to get. They're really hard to control. They're really hard to get to, which was kind of like how Dune was. And so I thought I liked that side of the game thematically, but I did think that some of the people's player cards, the bad guys should have been more cunning. Should have been more maybe mixed in and able to do something to somebody else. I don't know. Like, I feel like people had their guys and their leaders and they weren't really cunning. They didn't hurt anybody else on the game board. It was kind of like a little bit more like individual play. I don't know. Did any of you guys think of anything with the themes?
Do you think it's more solitaire, I guess what you're saying, versus player interaction?
Yeah, I guess with the player interaction, like what I was hoping, if someone was Baron Harkonnen, I would want that person to come out and be able to, I'm taking from you, and that's just who I am, because that's what I'm going to do. Like a little bit more.
Take that.
That would be a good table flipping moment. I feel like this game is really tight.
Okay.
And I struggle to get everything. And if I just struggle to get everything, and then Pete comes over and says, "Hey, I'll take that water from you." I mean,
I actually would love that moment.
I know you would.
That'd be great.
Yeah.
That's in the upcoming game we're going to be talking about. So with resources, but yeah, I mean, I got that's just something I thought thematically I thought would have been a little more interesting on the player cards. So that's fine.
Interesting.
Okay. How about some other things that we aren't really jiving with on this game?
Well, I'll jump off with that one. Kind of alludes to what I talked about earlier with the card market that's available. And when those flop out, they could be very expensive. And the first few rounds, you might not be able to purchase anything. And that's really tough. I know there's some small cards that you can buy to kind of fill that gap starting out, but you really feel, I guess it hurts a little bit to see good cards out there, and maybe you didn't get that 4 points to buy a card and you only got 3, and there's three good fours out there, and you're not going to get any of them while everybody else snags them up. I do know they fixed that with one of the expansions. They give you a little token, and once per game you can flip that over and wipe that market, which I think is good if you're playing that expansion. I guess if you really played this a lot, you probably could do after the round maybe swipe one card from the end and refresh another one just to kind of keep the market moving, because that can get a little stale, especially if there's nothing out there, that nobody really wants. That would be my biggest takeaway from that. David, you're looking at me like something on that.
Yeah, I just think maybe it's more of like, if you could do something to maybe reserve a card, like, and we see in some games where, you can pay something, but you can reserve it and then you could build it later or use it in the future if you could pay it off. Maybe that would help. But I do agree with you, Pete. Like in the early game, if the deck comes out and the draw for the marketplace is really high, it does stemmy the gameplay a little bit. So it could be one of those things where it's like, if everything's a 6 or a 7 on the first flip, maybe you have to reshuffle so that there's, not all stacked.
You could probably do some things just with, and again, it would be a house rule at this point, but hey, you take a certain number of cards that are 3 or less and you make up a 15 card deck, and that goes on top. And then the rest is just however it goes. But something to make sure something low comes out. Or, it's pretty common in games to where rather than, right now you buy a card, you just put another card out there. But a lot of games will say you buy a card, everything shifts down, and then you're going to get rid of the first, the first 2 in that line. That would at least get things moving and cycling a little more if you do end up with a whole set of cards where nobody wants anything.
Okay.
Because there's also some cruddy cards when they come out. If the ones come out late in the game, you probably don't want that either.
Yeah. Exactly.
That's kinda,
yeah, I agree with that.
Shuffle better.
So I would say one of my things about this game is, if you're teaching a beginner player how to play this game, somebody that's not as experienced, kind of like Pete was alluding to, there are traps I see in this game. One of them being always buying cards. If they don't understand kind of that mechanism, they could get a really bloated deck early and never be able to cycle through, and then you just kind of fall behind. And then the second thing, I think Pete talked about is there's those different factions on the left that you make alliances with, and you have to have certain cards to be able to go there. And if for whatever reason you didn't realize or you don't think about it, there could be points in the game where you're never going to be allowed to go to one of those places, one of those factions or the alliances. And I think, Pete, you got locked out one time.
I did,
for that for sure, and it hurt you. So I think that those are some pitfalls just to be aware that if you're teaching somebody, kind of pay attention, because some of the board could become unusable to them if they play the game a certain way.
And to that same point, I think then the more you play it, the more you're comfortable with the base things, and you can see things like that. Yeah. So if I'm going to trash a card, I want to make sure that I'm not just trashing a card that the power isn't that good, but do I still have a way to get to the green space? Do I still have a way to get to the yellow? And if I'm buying a card, I'm going to make sure that it's not just maybe a power I want, but it's meshing well with my hand. And I think when you're starting out, you're not going to be able to deal with that. You're just trying to keep everything straight in your head. But once all of that becomes just sort of normal to you, then you can get into the real intricacies of not just having a small deck or a right-sized deck, but having the right ratio of everything within that deck.
Hey, Danielle.
That's how you use it. It's not just how big it is.
Yeah. Danielle, I was curious because, we talked a little bit earlier. How do you feel about, when you're going up those alliances tracks and somebody passes you and takes a point away? We talked about the skirmish part of it. You're really not having any direct effect on somebody, but as a way to bring somebody down, or pull those points away and kind of edge yourself up. How do you feel about that? Because I know you had expressed some concern about not having enough conflict directly.
Well, so I think that was one of the things that I was allowing everybody else to kind of fight it out in the points game. So I was watching everybody kind of go up on the points board. I bought a couple I moved my token a couple spaces to the one red faction, I believe it is, where you can get the card that allows you to have every single spot on it. So I was filtering those into my deck early on. And I don't know if anybody knew quite what I was doing on that sideboard, but I kept going up and up and up because I did have that end game where if I was past 4 on each of those. It didn't matter if somebody had passed me, because if I was in each of those 4 categories and I was in the 3rd or 4th line up on those, I knew I was going to get 2 points at the end of the game. So I was kind of mitigating it that way. And so there were a couple times where I did let somebody pass her, and I just didn't like kind of bog it down. I was like, okay, I'll go to another one, make it look like I'm going over here to do something, because I gave that one up. So I was playing that real hard that 3rd game that we played.
Was that an intrigue card, or was that we played the Rise of X expansion? Was that one of the expansion cards?
Listen, this was not the Rise of X.
No? Okay.
That is coming up.
Okay.
No, this was the base game. Yeah.
Okay.
And you asked, it was an intrigue card that I got early on. I had received that card the prior game, and somehow I got it in the 3rd game of that we played, and I was like, yes, it was the one I wanted. So I got really good at that.
Well, the only other thing that I would say is I know those intrigue cards can be a little confusing when to play them, because there are plot cards which you're supposed to play during your turn.
Yeah.
And then there's end game scoring, which is at the end of the game. And then there's also the conflict cards. And I think there can be a little confusion, especially with new players, on when can I play those cards, because it may make sense. Timing is important in this game, especially during the battle as you're going around the table. You pass. All right, Daniela does something, and it keeps going around until everybody passes. So it's kind of important to keep that in mind. I think. I wouldn't call it a downside, but I think that's probably one of the little hurdles that people can get tripped up on.
Yeah, definitely learning curve on that for sure.
Yeah, I think that sometimes, we talk about decision, space, and sometimes I feel like when I play this game, you sometimes can get bad draws, and sometimes they happen consecutively. And if you're like kind of in the last position to go, sometimes there's really no places that you can even go. I think on a couple of the games, that I had played, it's just not a good feeling where, you draw poorly, first of all, but then the locations that you draw, everybody takes them, and you're really locked out at that point on where you're going to go, to the point where I think sometimes I would only put out one worker because there was really either A, nowhere else I could go, or B, it was a worthless spot for me to actually put somebody on there. So therefore I might as well just kind of shift down. I think that, to me, it's just it didn't feel good. So I think that, I don't know if there's any way you could mitigate that, but
every time, like you should always be putting your people out to get something. Yeah.
But I feel like it happened more than I would like. I mean, if it happens every once in a while, everybody kind of gets a bad draw, but I feel like it happened to me a little bit more than I felt like it happens in other deck building games. And I think part of the reason is because I don't know in the base game if there's enough cards in there to help thin out your deck. If you go down a path, where you start getting bloated, there's not a lot of mechanisms to get back to kind of neutral. And when you do, it's pretty much too late, I feel like, a lot of times, to actually come back on that front. So it's just one of the things that I feel like, again, telling new people not to blow your deck, but sometimes I think there could be stuff that just falls. I mean, you don't have anything else to buy, so you buy a card. That's what you have to do early. So yeah.
But before we wrap this up, I do want to go back to like a plus side on this. How do you guys feel about the multi-use cards? Because there's 2 phases of playing the card. You're actually playing the cards to go out either to a location, or you're saving the card at the end to actually play it for the actions at the bottom. And I really like that decision space. We really didn't get into that too much early on, but I wanted to get you guys' thoughts on that multi-use cards, because I think multi-use cards are really fabulous. It really can, give you those different decisions to make, and, give you some options that you may not have. Chris, you're shaking your head over there? Yeah.
Well, I'm just for me, I was always cognizant of that decision, but it was very rare that secondary power of, okay, when I reveal I'm getting this power, it wasn't very often where that would actually cause me to say, okay, I'm going to not put one of my agents out. Now, it did cause me to say, I'm going to play this card instead of that card to make sure I get that benefit. But I wasn't at least swayed enough to actually take the hit, so to speak, and not put an agent out there. I feel like, though,
I did that in the last game that we played, because I was really, I needed those points at the end, and and that's kind of where I'm going with it. Maybe not so much early on in the game, but later on, when you do have that grip full of cards, especially if you can draw more or use that men tap and draw that one extra card, it can really make a difference.
Yeah, I think sometimes, though, that was a little confusing, because like I was going after Benny Gesserit people one time, but then I realized that none of them could actually go to the Benny Gesserit spot. So I don't know if that's just like a thing I should have been looking for, but I thought it was confusing because I was like, I have all these Bene Gesserit cards, but I can't actually go to that faction spot because it doesn't actually have the thing on it there. So sometimes I got confused personally about looking at what the card was and then where that symbol was.
That actually falls in thematically with it because the Bene Gesserit really didn't have any alliances. They were used by, whoever. So I think that's, kind of cool. I'm not super into the lore of Dune, but I do believe that's kind of the way that works and why they're not tied to any specific alliance faction.
All right. I think one of the last things I want to talk about on this is the Rise of Ix. And this is perfectly comes along with the dislike button. Listen, all right, we played this and I did not think that this expansion for me added really anything to the game. I think from the deck perspective, it clogged the deck from a lot of good stuff coming out. There were so many cards out there that it was very hard to move and get to places I wanted to go. I thought the additional characters in the Rise of Ix were good. I really liked those powers. I think we all had a really interesting one, especially when it came to the ring. The signet ring. I thought those were very cool and stuff too. But that tech track on there too, I felt like that was very only good if you want to get the tech cards, and the tech cards, maybe I need a couple more plays of that. But overall for me, that Rise of Ix was 2 thumbs down.
Yeah, when it came out, I thought that, but when we actually played with it, I thought it worked okay. I was a little worried, okay, this is going to be even tighter with respect to putting people out there. Maybe that was because, again, I got my deck working the way I wanted it to, but I ended up enjoying that one. I wouldn't want much more complexity than what that added. I felt like we were initially looking and saying, "Oh, we'll add immortality." Is that the other one? And Pete started going through that one, and Dave and I are just looking at each other across the table like, "Oh my God, no, we can't learn them both at the same time." And so it can get to be too much. But I had that concern when Pete first started explaining it. But then when we played it, I thought it was okay for me.
Yeah, I think I'm on the opposite side of Daniela on this one. I don't know if I'd play this game again without Rise of Ix. I liked everything that it added. I liked the tech tree. I think there's more ways to win. I felt like I had more agency. So to me, I would definitely play with Rise of Ix almost every time if I had the option. But it also does add about an hour to the gameplay. So, where we're running about an hour and a half, hour and 40 minutes, playing just base game, with our first playthrough, Rise of Ix, a couple playthroughs that we've had, it's closer to 2.5 hours. So there is that trade-off maybe.
I would like to play with the other faction that we didn't get to play, but I think the base is done really, really well. And so I think for me, when we added the Ix, it was icky. So
yeah,
Ixie.
Yeah, I'm with Chris on this. I can take it or leave it. I think it adds to the battle part of the game. It really ramps that up. So if you like the conflict and want to get more, battling going in, I think it's an easy add.
Okay, Chris, what are the last couple things you got for us?
Yeah, I think the last thing I'll say is just the fact that I still had a lot more to say, but we only have so much time to put in here. And I think that's a testament to the game, that there's a lot there. There's a lot to talk about that is on the positive side, also potentially on the negative side, but that's because there's so much there. And I can appreciate that about a game. We didn't talk about some of the asymmetric player powers. Not sure they're balanced, but I'm also not sure that I've played it enough to say that, but I just know the last game we played, I looked over and David looks like a sandworm supper over there. He's just like, I do not like this player power at all. But I haven't played with it enough to know. But I love the fact that, hey, I could sit here and talk for another half hour and would still be talking about valid points and meaty things.
Good. Awesome. Well, David, why don't you take us over to the Collector's Corner? Is Dune Imperium an oasis or a mirage?
Yeah, so right now, Dune Imperium, ever since Dune Uprising came out, the market for Dune Imperium has been interesting. There's been a lot of debate in the community about which game is better, but it's actually helped to drive, I think, the price of Dune Imperium down a little bit. So, it's going to retail on Amazon right now or Target. It's still around $55, but on the used market, it's going for around $25 to $30. People that really bought the new edition, the Uprising, if they like it, they're selling off their old copies of Dune Imperium, and there's not a lot of people keeping both. But at the same time, there's a lot of people that are now, saying that they actually like Imperium better. So there's a lot of differences between the two. I mean, not all differences, but there's differences enough that I think you could keep both in a collection if you really wanted to. But in the overall market, if you're buying used on this game, my thing would be try to get a bundle with both expansions in there, because somebody out there is probably selling it with both expansions and the base game and maybe around $80. and that's a steal of a deal if you can get it for that.
So you're opening a wound here, because shortly after we played this a couple times before, and then we brought it out again. And this more recent time when we started playing a couple times, I was like, okay, I remember I wanted to buy this. I'm going to buy it now. Went on BGG, and like 12 days before that, some guy had put out there, Dune Imperium, $25, and I'll throw in the 2 expansions for 25 more. And I was like, okay, $50 for everything? Good. And I send him my note, and I still haven't heard back from her. And it's just irritating. That's been a couple weeks now.
All right. Well, while you get Chris a Band-Aid,
Yeah.
David, overall thoughts from the collector?
Overall, I really like Dune. I think, I'm not, like kind of Pete was saying, I'm not necessarily a Dune fan. On the outside, I've seen the movies, I do enjoy them, but I don't know all the lore that goes on with it. But for a game and what it offers, I don't think you have to know the universe in order to have fun with this game. I think some games you should probably know more, but I think this game does well enough job with just the mechanics and kind of how it flows that anybody can come to the table and get into it, even if they never seen Dune for the first time. So yeah, I really like it.
Okay, well, we can have a movie night, and then we'll play it again and see if it enhances our experience. All right, over to the Deluxeifier. What do you think overall for this game?
Yeah, I like this game. I play it a lot. I'm getting upwards of 20 plays over the times that I've been playing it. If it comes to the table and somebody wants to play it, I'm in. Count me in. I won't pass up a game if it's on the table.
And then any pieces in this game to Deluxeify?
Oh, yeah, there is a deluxe upgrade kit I actually looked at online just before, we did some recording. They're pretty expensive. I've seen them listed for about $100 for the actual, official kit. But I do know you can go out to Etsy and buy a lot of different components for it. So yeah, if you really, really like the game and you want to, spend twice of that in the components, it's out there. Check eBay. Like I said, I saw it for about $100, even a little bit more than that. So, something to keep in mind. I think the base components are good. I do like, the wooden wood. And I did see some, really creative ways to Deluxeify it. I saw little bottles with like little fake water in it, which would be really cool to do.
Real sand.
Yeah, we just pour it on the board, and
shift it.
Yeah, shift it around.
Hit it with, and let the worms come. Okay.
Yeah, but there's definitely ways to upgrade it if you're really interested. I would check out Etsy first, and then if you want to go whole hog, check out the web pages and see what's available.
All right, cool. Chris, as the intellectual introvert, thoughts on the game?
Yeah, I like Dune. I wouldn't put it in my top 10, but it's probably close. It's obviously a really popular game. There's a reason for that. It can be pretty tight at times, and you have to be able to mentally deal with that. But if you can get past that, to me, it's a fantastic game, and it's worth even the full price, I think.
All right. I think for me too, as the kind of the noob player, this first play that we played at my house, actually, I felt like I picked it up fairly quick. I felt like it was very straightforward, very easy. Again, Rise of Vix smacked me every which way, which I don't really enjoy. But for a first time player, I think I'm starting to understand mechanisms a lot more as I play and be consistent with this. So overall, for a noob, I don't know what I would kind of tell people to do with this game. I personally just enjoyed it. And I also like to say I technically won the last game. So there's that.
Yes, you did.
All right, guys, getting through the discussion here so far on Dune Imperium. A sandstorm's starting, so we're going to skedaddle, but we'll be back after a short break to explore the lost ruins of Arnak.
Lost Ruins of Arnak is a 1-to-4 player worker placement and deck building game that has you leading a team of archaeologists exploring an uncharted island, conducting research and battling epic monsters. The game board represents an island with campsites that provide various resources as well as several uncharted areas. You start with 2 archaeologists and a small deck of 6 cards, drawing 5 into your hand for each round. Cards are multiple use, providing either an action, resources, or transportation to a site. To place an archaeologist at an already discovered site, simply pay the travel cost using your cards, then reap the rewards from the site. Alternatively, you can discover a new site, typically requiring greater travel costs as well as the spending of compasses, a resource representing navigational knowledge. When a new site is discovered, idols are gained, which provide points and can be used to generate additional resources. The new site becomes another location that can be visited for resources. A guardian is also placed at the site. Defeat it by spending resources to gain points and a special boon. If it remains undefeated at the end of the round, you gain a fear card, which clogs up your deck and costs you points at the end of the game. You may also use your turn to purchase item or artifact cards for your deck, providing resources or special actions when played. Alternatively, you can also spend resources to ascend on the research track, gaining other resources and perks, game end bonuses, and potentially assistance to help you along the way. Your funding runs out after 5 rounds. Players earn points from defeated guardians, idols, their progress on the research track, and from item and artifact cards in their deck. After subtracting points for fear cards, the player with the most points cracks the whip and receives the fortune and glory. Lost Ruins of Arnak was designed by Min and Elwyn and was published in 2020 by Czech Games Edition.
Thanks, Chris. All right, we are out of the desert and onto this uncharted island. Guys, what do you really dig about Lost Ruins of Arnak?
I'll start this one out. I really like the feel of the exploration on this game. Going out to the different areas on the board, actually uncovering tiles, seeing what it actually is there, and then having to, overcome those monsters. You don't actually kill them, you overcome them. So, it's pretty thematic. I really enjoy that aspect of the game.
Yeah.
Chris, what do you think?
Yeah, I really love the theme. Archaeology in general fascinates me. It was one of my could-have-been jobs. I'm obviously an engineer. If not, I would have been a teacher. And if not, maybe I would have been an archaeologist. I used to subscribe to Archaeology Digest and would read it from cover to cover. It just fascinates me looking at ancient history and love ancient Egypt and things like that. So the theme alone sucks me in and says, okay, that's something I want to play.
Yeah, I see you're dressed as Indiana Jones. So
Exactly. Yeah.
You really take it to the limits.
Yeah, and I agree. Same. I think it's a fantastic exploration game. There are so many routes and different ways you can tackle this game. There's options to explore, as you kind of touched on that too, Pete. The monsters or the guardian tiles, as you called them. You can go those routes. You can go up the other exploration track using your magnifying glass or your book. You can do a couple different things on there. And as you go up those tracks, it allows you for the assistance. So there is so much you can do in this. Each and every game, I find it's a little bit different for me, just because I'm still trying to figure out how to win this game. Haven't done very well at it, but I really, really like it. So yeah, it's really great so far.
My favorite actually moment about this game is just kind of how the turn order actually works in a round. Meaning that in order to keep going, you have to spend resources. But as long as you can continue to spend resources when it comes back to you, you can still play in that round. I like the feeling that, I could stop if I want to stop short, or I could try to, do everything in my power to keep extending my turn, longer than everybody else's and keep continuing to play if I have the ability to do so. And I like that option, that agency again, giving me control of basically what I'm doing, not saying, oh, I only have 2 moves this round. I like the fact that I could have 5 moves this round. I could maybe even have 7 if I really wanted to, or I could stop and, cultivate my resources for that next round. I really like that agency that it gives you in this game.
Yeah. The first time I played this, I remember it was like very player move, player move, player move. The one game we played, I couldn't wait for the round to end because everybody had so many things they could do. But that actually prolonged one of the games to it being the full all-out game I feel like it should have been, where we went round and round and round and round. And if you weren't playing your meeple on that, you were buying and you were getting more cards in your hand and you were adding to your hand. And it was really, really cool to see that come out. So I agree with that, David.
I see a lot of people online that maybe not a lot, but enough to be noteworthy that say, oh, you only get 2 archaeologists. There's not enough to do in this game. And they need to play it a couple more times and realize that, you only get 2 archaeologists, but you can do a lot without placing an archaeologist. There's a lot, like you said, to really stretch out your turn if you play it all right.
Yeah, that was one of the comments I was going to make too. You have 5 rounds and you have 2 workers, as you say. You think, well, I got 10 moves, but you really don't. You actually keep going and going. It's very deceiving when you first start playing, and until you get that engine going, and I don't know that I'd even call it an engine. You are building your deck, and you are trying to leverage those resources that you can get, but you're scrounging for every resource, and I know there were times I'm looking over at Chris's board over there and I said, man, he's got that one ruby. Is he going to go up up that track before I do, and I'm just hoping he doesn't go, and I'm looking over, at David's board, trying not to look that way, and so that's pretty cool the way that that it is ultimately a race too. So
Yeah.
Yeah, you guys are talking about the puzzle in the game, and I love the puzzle. I've talked about that before. Of okay, there's opportunity here. I just got to figure out how to do it, and a lot of times it's like 80% formed in your mind. I know there's a way here, and you're trying to figure it out. But I think for me, it's the right level of complexity to where you can get a little bit of AP, but for the most part, it is a solvable puzzle to try to figure out either how to do what you want to do, or to at least understand this is what I'm going to be able to do, and I just got to find out the exact combination. I love that puzzle and trying to figure that out.
Yeah, and I think with the resources being as tight as they are, there's other resources too that you should always be spending. I think with the coins, that's one of the things that I always spend money on to get more cards in my deck, because I know those are going to be worth endpoint games. And so that's something I'm super focused on. And so I think in the last couple of games, I realized you got resources, spend them, do it on something, wherever you're going. You need to savor a little bit, but to have a ton of resources on your board for a couple rounds makes absolutely no sense. I think
I'm going to counter that slightly and say, again, deck size matters. And if you're buying too many cards maybe too early, then you may not be able to get the cards out when you want to. And I'm looking to be able to, certainly I want to exile my fear cards, and I'm looking potentially to exile some of my starter cards too. And I want to be careful if I have too many cards in my deck, I'm going to buy cards and hardly ever get to see them. And so you don't want your deck to be too big, but you also don't want it to be too small. And it's finding that right amount of time to where you can get almost every card out every round. That's ideal to me.
Interesting, because I bought a lot of cards, I think, at the top that had a lot to do with what I was trying to do. I wouldn't just buy, I guess I could rephrase that and say I wouldn't just buy a card just to have a one gold coin. I'm buying ones that have 3 points on it at the end of the game that makes sense for what I'm trying to do, for sure. So yeah, I'm going
to buy a card that I think is going to be useful to me,
right,
in however much of the game is left. And again, I don't want to clog up my deck. It's got to be good enough to go and get it. Now in the last round, I'll buy whatever I can. If I've already kind of just shot everything I can, then I'll buy them there. But I want to be careful about putting a card in there that might be useful once, but then it's not going to do me any good if it comes up again.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you're playing with a small deck. That's fine.
No, I'm playing with the right size.
No,
deck.
you said just a handful. So
he's not
whatever's
playing
on
with
your
the full
hand.
deck.
Anything more than a handful, you're risking a sprained toe.
The one thing I like about the way that the deck goes is it starts off, there's more of the tools there than the artifacts. And as the game progresses, that shifts, which really adds a cool dynamic to the game, because those artifacts cards are pretty powerful if you actually get the chance to use them. You have to spend your compasses in order to grab them. You get one free, shot with it, but then you got to, engineer your deck to be able to make sure that you have enough tablets to be able to use it again. So the two different types of cards are kind of unique in this game, which I think, you can kind of overlook. It's easy early to buy all those tool cards or whatever they're called, because they help you out. But those artifacts can be really, really powerful in the right moments.
Yeah, the artifact cards are trash, but we'll get to that. Thanks. Okay. All right. So what else did you guys like? I also think the expansions in this are fantastic. I really like the other players that we got. We played that a couple times. They have different powers. They have different things that you can do. So it totally changes the game and what you're trying to do. I don't know if anybody has played with those expansions. And
I love the expedition leaders. Again, we're getting into the expansions here, but I think maybe the base game struggles a little bit on replayability, and we'll get to that in the negatives. But to me, that all goes away when you get those expedition leaders in there. Now there's all these different ways to play it. You get the next expansion, you get a couple more leaders to play with. They're fantastic, and each one's a different challenge, a different puzzle. I played with the Mystic that one time a couple of weeks ago, and it was a puzzle, but it was a fun puzzle to figure out and just an entirely different way to play.
But even though you said that the base game lacks a little when you add the expansions, you have played it solo. And you said you liked it solo, correct?
I think that for me, the solo game is great. There are different schools of thought to where some people, when they play solo, they want a different experience than if you're playing. Some people want the same experience. This one is a great, I'll call it an automa. I don't know if it's officially an automa. To me, it's a great automa where you really feel like you're playing a two-player game against someone. They're blocking spots. They're going up the research track. And I can play against that automa and be done in an hour and feel like I got a full game. Okay. I absolutely love the solo game.
Okay, awesome. I also think for this game, the other thing I really like is the ending. You really don't know where people are going to be and who's going to win, because you can see somebody has temple tiles or you can see somebody has certain things, but when we're going around, we're counting things up. You don't know how much fear people have. You don't know how many artifacts people have. You don't know how whatever, is in people's hands. So that's a little bit of one of those things that comes out at the end and you're kind of like, oh, I guess I did really, really poor or something, or man, that person really won or really ran away with it. So any other things?
Well, I'm going to tell you, I think the components are great. The rubies, tablets, and arrowheads, I thought that before I bought it myself, I thought that was, that Pete had blinged his game out already.
Yeah.
Those come with the base game. The compasses and coins are more, chit based, but great rubies, great tablets, great arrowheads. Those are fantastic.
Yeah.
And even though what I said about replayability, it also comes with a double-sided board, and that the other side, while it's similar, it's also significantly different as well. Same kind of layout, but totally different going up that research track, and totally different costs for when you're exploring. And so I thought those were great pieces of the game as well.
Mm-hmm.
I would say just the last thing about this game that kind of really stood out to me as both a positive, but could be a slight negative, is just the timing that you actually, the pace of how the game is played. I think if you're a first-time player, that timing kind of we were mentioned earlier, it's kind of hard to get because there's no set amount of turns, per round. But the other part about that is, when you buy a card from the market, normally if you're in a deck building game, it goes straight to your discard pile, and then you have to wait till, your pile runs out, and then you can shuffle it back in. On this game, you can buy a market card, and it goes on the bottom of your active pile.
Yeah.
And so a lot of times, if you're timing this outright, you can time it so that you buy a card and you could still play it that round if your deck is low enough and you have enough cards that let you draw cards. And I think that's a neat aspect. And I feel like it just gives you a little bit more agency than other games that I see with a deck building mechanism. I like that it goes straight into your active pile and not in your discard pile. So even if you do start getting a bloated deck, if you buy stuff, you're going to still see it before you see all the rest of the stuff come out in your deck.
And the other piece that goes with that, though, is your discard pile. At the end of each round, you're gonna shuffle that up and put it on the bottom. So if you're not getting 5 cards off, or you're gonna end up getting more, man, you got to be careful what you put in that discard pile too. And if you got too much fear in there, it may end up burning you, even though you just got it.
Yeah.
Which is this game, they actually have cards in there though where it allows you to draw your bottom card from your deck, not your tops. And I think that's unique in a lot of the deck builders that I've played. I haven't ever seen that kind of mechanism where because the most active cards always go on the bottom. So if you have the other card, hey, I'm going to play that card next time, and not have to really rely on the luck of the draw, I guess, to try to get it back in your hand.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. The one other thing I'd add with the deck is I believe most of those cards are unique and very thematic. So, I always like getting the dog, which allows you to go back. I think it'll let you go back to the tent to get more resources. So, but each card is really thematic. You get to feel like you're doing that card, whatever it is. I mean, there's the airplane, which allows you to go out farther. So exploring those cards are really fun. And I do know the expansions add even more to it. So I just want to add that in that the cards, I really enjoy looking at them and seeing what they offer and building your deck around it.
Yeah, excellent. Chris, what are the last couple of things you got for us from the likes?
Yeah, when we talked about Dune Imperium, we talked about progression and how you have the beginning of the game, the end of the game being different. That certainly exists here as well. That first round, you're not able to do a whole lot, even though, again, you got 2 archaeologists at the beginning, you got 2 at the end. But once you've established certain things and certain capabilities, maybe you've built a good deck. That 5th round, it can go on a long time when you're, okay, now I'm going to go over here. That allows me to do this, and that's going to allow me to do that. Now I'm going to play this card. And there's a lot that can get done. And that 5th round is light years away from, or maybe miles since we're
kilometers.
Kilometers away. But that 5th round is definitely significantly different than the first round, and things build as your capabilities build. The last thing I'll say as a positive for this is we talked about the solo game in general. There's also a solo campaign that's available out there. It's free. The Search for Professor Kutil. I'm not sure exactly how to pronounce that, but you go onto the website for the game and you can just download it, or you have an app and just run it on the app, and it's a totally different experience. So you're playing the first chapter, and you have a couple different goals and achievements to go for, and these rules are different. And then you go to the second chapter and the rules are different again. And so again, yet another way of replayability. I'm playing through that now. I'm on the last chapter with the base leaders. And then I can go back and play with some of the expansion leaders, and just, again, totally different experience again. And there's just a lot that you can get from this game.
That's cool that that's free too.
Yeah.
anything about Arnak that just does not translate for you. I think I'm going to go back to talking about Pete's point with the artifact cards. So I feel like the artifact cards are just okay for the points that it gives you, because you have to have a lot of resources, to buy them, and then you always have to have a tablet to use it. So to me, you're putting in a ton of resources to potentially have that card in your deck to draw out to be able to use at the proper time. To me, I don't feel like it's worth it to have to go out and buy a few of them, maybe a couple per game, but if that. I don't know.
I think when you buy them, but also how are you setting up? When you buy an artifact, you get to use it immediately free. And then, when it comes up, then, but you could get it for the travel cost. There's one card, at least more, where the power of that artifact is you get 2 tablets. And so you play it and you have to spend a tablet, then you get 2. And so you're constantly kind of building up your
one
tablets.
Card, though.
I understand that, but there are other cards there that give you extra tablets. And if you have a couple that allow you to do that, and one of the games I was playing, I had that in one of my solo games. And I was just able to really use the heck out of those artifacts because I was able to continue to generate those tablets.
Yeah, you got to get the right cards for what you're trying to accomplish. And I'm not saying go out and buy every artifact that's out there, but I do believe that, they give you a little bit more in the long run. And again, I think as that game ramps up, they are more expensive. But again, as that game progresses, they become more available. And I know that's a better way of progressing up the tracks. And, I'm gonna progressing up the tracks is the segue into what I think one of the things is that I don't like about the game is I really feel that you have to go up that temple track in order to win. If you don't, I don't think you're ever going to win.
Interesting.
Of all the games that I played, if you're far behind on that, you're just not going to, it doesn't matter how many monsters you overcome or guardians that you overcome. You just don't get there without going up that track. And as you're going up that track, it progressively increases those points.
So would you say you would rather have it be different ways to win without having to go up that's one of your frustrations?
Yeah, I'm not saying that's the only way to win, but to do it without going up the track, I don't think you're going to get there. I think you have to do it in combination, and you have to crawl up that track as much as you may not want to.
No, I think, for the most part, I would agree with Pete. My plays are a lot more limited than what Pete's played this game. It's not a game that I've played a whole ton. But I do see that when I do make it a point to go up that track, because I've tried to play it where I go up that track and when I don't, and I feel like when I don't, I normally get slaughtered. So I don't know, maybe it's the way I'm playing, but, that's something. But, one of my biggest kind of disappointments, I just remember one game I was playing, kind of like Chris was saying, normally the climax is in the 5th round. But the one thing I don't like about this game is that when you have to draw cards, you can only draw cards that are in your deck. You can't ever reshuffle your discard pile over. And so one of
the entire thing you mean. Yeah.
And so one of the games, I had exactly 5 cards going into the 5th round, and I did not know that. And when I got it, basically I was screwed for the whole round because I only had 5 cards. I couldn't do anything really, and it's a really bad experience. So I don't know why they have that. You can't, just draw. That's like almost standard in every deck builder. But, for whatever reason, that's the rule in this game, and I don't like it.
Yeah, that's one thing. I think I had a couple rounds. I had 10 cards. So 5 were coming in, 5 were going out, and then I kept doing that, and I knew exactly. I was like, I'm going to get like 3 fear in this round.
You need to get some artifacts that allow you
well, if I could spend 4 compasses there and 4 compasses there, and then you can't go up the track. No resources.
There are artifacts that allow you to draw cards. But seriously, there are artifacts and items that allow you to draw cards, artifacts and items that allow you to shed your deck, exile cards, and you do have to, in my mind, use those together and appropriately to get that deck. Because I agree. I remember that game where you had, and you're like, this was terrible. I got 5 cards that are crap, and it's the last round when it's critical.
Yeah. And I didn't know that, I guess. I'm not counting the cards in my active pile, so maybe that's something that now in future rounds, I've never not had that because I'm always actively like, there's no way I'm going to just have 5 cards going into that last round, no matter what.
Yeah, I've gotten bitten by that too. It just sometimes it turns out more so early on in the game. As you're building your deck, you may not have everything there, especially if you grab one of those cards that do allow you to draw more cards. This is another game, going back to Dune, where card draw is important. When you can do that, that really ramps up your engine. And I think the last game that I won, I had cards I was drawing cards every time. It just feels so good. So take that for what it's worth.
Pete, you were talking about having to go up the research track. I just want to circle back and say I agree 100%. I had that as one of my things. I think you have to go up there.
Yeah.
You don't have to be the first one to the top, but if someone's significantly higher than you on that track, you're probably going to struggle.
Yeah.
And I think the last game we played, David, you weren't really moving up the track much, but you were killing the heck out of Guardians. And I thought, well, I'm interested to see how this game ends up. You're not really doing the research track, but you're going after the Gardens. I was going way up the research track, and everybody else was kind of around the same level. And I think that I had a really good game that time, and I was up here, and everybody else was down.
Yeah.
And you scored just as well as everybody else, but not as well as me when I was that high on the research track. And this is like, that just says to me, you have to go up the research track.
Yeah.
Now, what I also like about that, though, is that in order to go up the research track, you have to do a lot of the other things. You can't say, I'm just going to go up the research
Right.
track. You have to do some of those other things.
Yeah, 'cause you need
But then
tiles.
right. But it's just finding that balance.
Yeah.
There's nothing in the base game that indicates you've passed. And that's a nitpick, but it's just irritating. Right?
You've passed what?
That I'm no longer in this round.
Yeah.
Right. So I
okay.
pass. And when you get the first expansion, then you have this little
Tent,
campsite that you kind of put it, make it dark, and then they can tell. But there's nothing in the base game that lets you know you passed. You just go, I passed. Every time it comes around to you to remind people that no, you're the only two in the round. Keep going.
You probably get the campsite and just put it in the base then.
Yeah, because I think that we played the expansion first with Pete's copy, and then when you guys bought yours, we're like, they're missing a piece in
Yeah,
here.
it's like, where is it? Exactly.
Yeah.
And then I bought the expansion. Like, okay, there it is.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That was
That's
weird.
just kind of weird. Again, just a little nitpick, but it's like, why would you do that? I don't know.
All right, guys. Any final thoughts with maybe some of the things that frustrated anyone?
The only other thing, and David talked about this earlier, is for new players, it is a little confusing when you buy that tool card. You got to put it under your deck. You got to watch new players when they're doing that and understanding that. That can trip up people. So that's not necessarily a dislike. I think that's just a little complexity in there that you got to make sure you share with your players.
And it makes it a little more complex when, if you get an artifact, it doesn't go onto your deck.
Yeah.
It's going on your discard, but you're also using it. And so, you got to get that into your head.
Yeah.
Can I just have my one dislike?
No.
Thank you.
Sure.
It's the artifact card. My, I think last nitpick is that I can't figure out how to win this game. So I'm just have to go up on all the resource tracks and figure that out. But let's take it over to the collector's corner. David, why don't you tell us about Lost Ruins of Arnak and where the payoff is worth the funding?
Okay, so we're in June, and the only reason why I mentioned this, it's June 2024, and it's just a weird time for this game because we actually went out, we bought this game for Daniela for her birthday last month, and the game was widely available on Amazon and at Target for $40. Now, if you go out there a month later, I think the cheapest copy right now available on Amazon is over $80.
What?
And Target is actually sold out because I tried to buy it for somebody else and ship it to them, and it was like, nope, no
I
copies
got mine
available.
for $30 off of Target.
Wow.
Yeah.
I shouldn't have.
And
I
so,
should have took the
like-
shrink wrap
And
off.
so there's just nothing there. The only place mass market I could find this game besides your local game boarding, your game board stores, was Barnes and Nobles. Right now has it for like $42. But everybody else is at 50, 60 at your local FLGS stores. But as far as going used on this right now, I'm seeing $30 to $40 on the used market, but I also don't see a lot of copies of this always popping up on the used market. So there is that kind of differential as far as that goes. I see the expansions sometimes pop up, but not the base game as much as you would think would pop up, especially with a game from 2020.
Do you have any idea what has caused this in the last month?
I just think it's probably, like the ebbs and flows. They're probably in between shipments. So I would say, if you're really looking to purchase this game, maybe hold off. Because I think it'll come back out for around $40 again because all the sites are listing it. It's just out of stock right now for whatever reason.
It seems like a lot of companies are doing that and allowing that to happen. We talked about Modern Art a good while ago where, you can't find it and people are buying it for $100 and they just wait a month and they printed it again.
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
they printed it again. Yep.
All right. So maybe it's just a supply and demand thing that they're waiting on. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, David. So as the collector, what do you think about this in your personal collection?
Yeah, this is actually a game I don't own in my personal collection yet.
You can borrow mine.
Yeah, I know. I bought it for a lot of people. That's the funny part about this game. I've given it out as gifts. But personally, it hasn't come into my collection. Probably because every person in this room right now, the three of you guys, all own the copy. And so I don't feel the need to necessarily own this one.
Yeah.
But, I guess if it's not coming back in print now, no, I'm just messing. It kind of makes me want to do it. But as far as like value goes, all our gameplays that I've recorded for us, at least as a group, they're right around an hour and 30 minutes. So I do think for even a $50 game, if you go out and buy it for around that price, I do think you're getting great value. So, That's something I always look for. Is this game collectible? I would say no, because it's too mass market. But is this game of good value at that price point? Are you going to get a lot of fun with it? I would say yes.
Okay. All right. As the Deluxeifier, what do you think about this game and the Deluxeified pieces and components of it?
Yeah, what I did to my game, and Daniela, you got a little extra in your birthday
coins.
wish. You got some coins and compasses. As Chris mentioned before, the base components on it, they really did a fantastic job with the rubies and the arrowheads and the tablets. And then they went cheap with the coins and the compasses, and I just couldn't have that. So I actually went out on Amazon. They have these real little small compasses that you can get. I think they give them out to Boy Scouts or whatever, but you can buy like 100 of them for like $10.
Yeah,
and those
they're really tiny, and they actually work. They're really cool.
Yeah, you take about 4 with you, and pick the best 2 or 3 that work. But I don't think you'll be heading south if you're heading north. But so I did that, and I also just bought some very generic coins that are, not really themed, but they look like coins that you would find on an archaeology dig. So those were the 2 things that I really did to up the game. Obviously, I sleeve it as well. It being a deck builder, I always suggest doing that, especially if you're shuffling the cards over and over again, because they will wear.
Okay.
So those are the 2 things that I did, and I think it just adds to the game.
All right, Chris, as the intellectual introvert, thoughts on this game?
Yeah, I talked earlier that I really like the puzzle. I think it's the right level of complexity to where it's solvable in a reasonable amount of time with a reasonable amount of brain power. It really hits the spot for me. I like the game a lot. I've enjoyed it. I limited myself this year. At least in theory, I said I'm only going to buy so many games. I think I gave myself on average 1 per month, 12 for the year.
Origins is coming up.
Yeah, I know. But so far, I mean, it's June. I've only bought 3, but this is one of the 3. And it was like, I played it, and I think the first time I played, I was like, I'm not sure if that clicked for me. And then I was thinking about it after. I was like, maybe I actually like that game. And I played it again. I said, okay, I got to buy it. And I've played it, I think, 10 times solo, alone, just so far. Really, really enjoying this game.
Excellent. Thank you. Yeah. I think as the noob, there are a lot of different rules in this game, and some of them aren't always written. There are some things where I think Pete had alluded to earlier, a couple boots can equal a plane, or there was a really bizarre rule here. And I remember at one point, David was like, wait, that equals
2 coins. 2 coins, you can buy a plane.
2 coins can buy a plane.
I still don't remember that rule. So yeah, there we go.
So there's a couple things like that may frustrate you as you play this game. But I would just say, as we've all kind of talked about, it's an exploration game. You're going to have to play this quite a few times to get out there and understand, go through the plays, go up the track, go explore monsters, go do the artifacts if you want to be that loser. No, I'm just kidding. I'm going to be that loser next time. I'm going to buy all artifacts, buy the tools, buy everything that you can, and really just explore this game and see a way you can win with it. And if you got points for it, I'd love to hear it in any of our social media, or if you want to email me, what are your tips to winning this game? Because I need to beat these guys. So, all right, guys, we thank you for all that. We pretty much grabbed every artifact in this particular temple. Now let's see what we can dig up over today's Battle of the Funnest.
All right, everyone, the moment of truth has arrived. It's time to separate the men from the boys, or more appropriately, the games from the toys. We're pitting these games head to head against each other in the ultimate face-off. In one corner, weighing in at 3.05 out of 5 with an overall BGG rating of 8.4, the most precious game in all the known universe. More at home in the chome than a million Melange merchants, sweet sustenance for soul-seeking Solari, the leader of the Landsrod, the freak of the Fremen, the mentor of the Mentats, the silencer of sandworms, Dune Imperium. In the other corner, weighing in at 2.91 out of 5, with an overall BGG rating of 8.1. Originally discovered on a small island while surveying the sacred stratum of an exciting excavation, a free-flowing fountain of fortune, the enticing artifact that every archaeologist aches after, the glorious governor of gargantuan guardians, everybody's idol, can you dig it? Lost Ruins of Arnak. And now let's find out which one stacked the deck in our Battle of the Funnest Showdown. Okay guys, you remember how this works. We're going to evaluate these games head-to-head in 5 different categories: theme and production, mechanisms, value for your time, replayability, and the fun factor. We'll each choose which game we think outdoes the other in each category. The game that gets the most votes wins the category, and the game that wins the most categories takes the prize in our Battle of the Funnest. So let's get to it, starting with theme and production. David, let's start with you.
Yeah, for me, this is an easy one. I know there's not probably many other easier ones on this battle, but for me, this one's Lost Ruins of Arnak. I just think it's an original IP. I don't really like things that are necessarily always themed after something that's actually existing. So I just like the artwork. I like the cool Indiana Jones kind of feel, but not necessarily being Indiana Jones. So for me, it's an easy one. I also think the production value is really high just in the base game. To Chris.
Yeah, for me, it's Arnak as well. I mentioned earlier, I love the archaeologist theme. I feel like it's incorporated well into the gameplay. Tablets, arrowheads, rubies that come with just the base game are great. Chunky little archaeologists. I mean, Dune has the meeples for the agents, but the soldiers are just cubes. I think from the production standpoint, Arnak. From the theme standpoint, Arnak. So for me, it's Arnak. Pete.
Yeah, I'm digging it too. Arnak for sure. The board just looks gorgeous. It really does. We talked about the components, other than the little cardboard tokens that come with it, but that's easily remedied. Dune, I like the game. The production is okay. I think it's a solid production. The board's bland, but so. Theme and production for me, it's Arnak all the way. Daniela, are we sweeping this up?
Yeah, today we're going to sweep this. Arnak is beautiful. You get the game out, you put it on the board on the table. It has amazing themes. It's overall just the pieces, the deluxeified pieces that we have from Pete here was great. It really brings out the exploration theme, and I really enjoy that. I think Dune does get a little bit more hate than it's owed. I do think it is a little thematic. Again, I spoke earlier on the water and the spice and how hard that is to come by, but there's nothing outstanding in Dune. So overall, Dune could use a little bit more of some upgrades and maybe just to intensify some of the components there. So overall, Arnak.
All right, so round one, pretty much a beatdown, Arnak across the board for theme and production. Now we're going to go on to mechanisms. I'll start here, and I'm going to go with Dune. For me, the multi-use cards, the way the cards determine not only, again, their own action, but tie to worker placement, I just think it's really well done. I don't have anything against the mechanisms in Arnak. I do think they're a little more standard. I just think Dune really, really does well on that. I enjoyed the mechanism. So I'm going with Dune, and I'll kick it back to Daniela.
Yeah, I'm actually going to go with Dune here as well, because I do think there are more ways to win in Dune, just because you can go through certain places on the board and send your players and do other things as well. And you can do the conflict with Arnak, as we have already spoken about. I think you do have to go up on that track to win, and sometimes I don't want to do that. David.
Yeah, so you guys know that earlier today I said that I really love the way the mechanisms work in Dune, but I do like Lost Ruins of Arnak's one mechanism, which is the agency I get with deciding when and where my turn ends. And so I just love it so much. I don't really see that, to be honest, in a lot of games that I play today. And so for that one mechanism, that's that agency that I love to have in games where I feel like I'm in control of what I'm doing and kind of control that destiny. I'm going to go with Lost Ruins on this one. To Pete.
Yeah, I'm going to go in the Dune camp on this one. I think overall it's a better deck builder. They're both deck builders. I like cycling through the cards more in Dune. You're going through them more often. You got 10 rounds versus the 5 rounds. And I also think it feels a little bit better as a worker placement too. We mentioned before Arnak has 2 workers, and to me I just need that little bit more. And even in Dune, I want that little extra. Even getting that men tap is it for me. So I'm going to go with Dune.
All right, so Dune 3-1 over Arnak in mechanisms, which means it's back tied up again, 1-1, Dune and Arnak. All right, so now value for your time. Pete, we'll start with you.
Yeah, I'm gonna stick with Dune on this one. I like the more interaction. It may not be direct conflict, but when I'm playing a game with other people, I want to be involved with them. When I'm playing Arnak, it's more puzzly for me, and I can do that puzzle alone or with 2 people. With more people, I really, really enjoy Dune. With more people, in Arnak, it was much tighter. So just for me, the interactiveness of Dune, being able to kind of bump people around, get in and do a little skirmish, Dune's the winner for me. Daniela?
Man, I'm still thinking this one through. So both of these games have some setup to them. You have to take quite a bit out, quite a bit of setup. So Dune is running at about an hour 45 or something like that every time we play it. Arnak is running at about an hour 20-ish when we're playing it. As far as the value for your time, I guess it depends on which one you want to play for the amount of time. I do think for all the pieces and components, I like how fast Arnak is for what it is, and in being able to kind of just run through that. I think I'm going to vote Arnak on this, but it's really nothing against Dune. David.
Ooh, so value for my time. Like Daniela was mentioning in our play times when we played this game a little bit earlier, I look back and forth. I think that I just get more value for my time out of Dune, just for what it is. I feel like, I always judge it by how fast do I feel or how slow does time go, right? Do I feel like I'm sitting there waiting for a game to end, or do I feel like, oh my goodness, I can't believe it was like 2 hours and the game just went by? And I get a little bit more from Dune. Not a lot, I would say, just by a hair's nose, but I'm going to go with Dune as far as that feeling of, wow, I can't believe that was like an hour and a half play session because it felt like 5 minutes. And I feel like this for both games, but Dune just a little bit more. To Chris.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that, because for me, sometimes when I'm playing Dune, I feel like it's just a little too long. And I like what you said, Daniela, about the setup time. Dune, it does seem like it takes us longer to set that up. In reality, Arnak, you just take the resources, throw them down. The decks are relatively easy to separate, and then you go. So I like that point as well. I never feel like it's a little too long on Arnak. Sometimes I might feel like hey, this is going a little too fast. But then you get to that fifth round, and you get so much out of that fifth round that I feel like it ends up being just right. And then great solo mode for Arnak as well. That really clicked for me. That's been taking me about an hour each time. I'm going to go with Arnak, which means we're sitting here in a 2-2 tie. And you all know that we have a buddy Dave out there who's our fifth meeple. He's also our tiebreaker. And Pete is sitting on the precious knowledge. He's going to go inside the temple, and we'll see what he comes out with. Pete, what did Dave have to say?
All right. Value for your time. I know Dave really likes this game. He did select Arnak, and here is his reason. He says, I'm always thinking about my next turn. I like how you can extend your actions with proper resource management with the 5 rounds. Always wish the game would go longer. So there you have it.
Okay.
All right. So value for your time. Dave breaks that tie. He goes with Arnak. So 3-2. Arnak now goes up 2-1. We'll go to replayability. I'll kick this one off. I'm going with Dune. I love Arnak, but I do think it does start to feel a little samey. I think if you start to get into the expansions, I might say something different, and I think I did. The double-sided board helps with Arnak. And again, with the expansion, it's much improved. But for the base game, I think Dune feels different every time I played, at least, as opposed to Arnak. So I'm going to go with Dune and kick it to Daniela.
I'm going to go strictly based off the base game for both of these in this category for replayability. So I am actually going to choose Dune as well, because I do think there are more ways to win that game versus Arnak. And Arnak, now that I know, I keep talking about the temple track and going up there. Knowing that I have to do that every single time is going to be interesting, because I still do want to play this. It's now in my collection and I want to play it, but I think overall replayability, Dune is going to be a little more interesting to see how I can eke that out. David.
Yeah, for me, this one's going to be Dune on this one as well. I do think the replayability is just better, because every time it's a different kind of game, because there's more player interaction. I know Lost Ruins, I don't really always see the player interaction other than blocking a spot from somebody else, but I feel like with Dune, just the different choices you have in there, it really seems when there's 4 players at a table, really trying to figure out, what can I do? And even if you feel like you're behind, I always feel like in Dune, you have still a chance to come back and pull something off. Maybe you get an entry card that's worth a point, that nobody knows you have. But I always feel like at the end, it's always real tight. So I'm going with Dune on replayability. Multiple ways to win. Going over to Pete.
Yeah, this one was really tough for me. I really didn't have an answer, but what I did have written down is I had Arnak by an edge with replayability, and I think I'm basing that more off of the expansions versus the base game. If we were to say just base game, I probably would maybe lean toward Dune. I just like the Arnak, that I think you can just play it over and over and explore things a little bit more. So I'm going to go with Arnak for this one. I'll be out doing my own dig by myself, guys.
Yeah, because it just doesn't matter what you think, Pete.
I know.
3-1, Dune takes replayability over Arnak, which means we've got a 2-2 tie. If you look at the individual votes, other than the tiebreaker, we've got 8 votes for each one. So we thought this was going to be close. It is, and it all comes down to the fun factor. And I'm going to start with Daniela.
Oh, man. I'm going to pee. No, I'm just kidding. All right. So fun factor, I think you got to look at these in 2 different ways. I think Dune is 100% strategy based. I think Arnak is very much more exploring based and what you want to explore on this. For me personally, I'm going to go based off of the entirety of it, the theme, the replayability, everything that I'm doing. And then when I'm having fun playing this, it's going to be Arnak because I really like that point of view on it. So how about you, Pete?
Yeah, I like the interaction of Dune better. As far as the fun factor, again, I think this is a great. I think Arnak is a great game. You could play by yourself. It plays really well. But again, if I'm going to sit down and play a game, and I want some, thinking behind it, some strategy, Dune's really going to level it up for me over, doing the exploration. So, David, I see you shaking your head. Which side are you on?
Yeah, so this one for me, I played both of these games, and I want to say this. When I played the first time for both of these games, I remember playing Dune Imperium. I think, Chris, you were there, and a couple other people were there, and I was like, this game sucks. I do remember saying that, and when I played Lost Ruins for the first time, I was like, wow, this game rocks. And I think the more I played both, though, my opinion on both of them has actually flopped. I feel like I've explored, Lost Ruins, just base game. I don't play a lot of the expansions or anything like that, but just the base game, I feel like there are certain ways to win. And for me, it's all about that puzzle. And I'm like, sometimes when the cards come out, or Dune's just grown on me, kind of like a fine wine. Every time I play it, it gets better. I saw the Rise of Ix just one time and I was like, oh my goodness, I want to play with this more because I feel like there's so much more to explore here. And so for me, it's a weird, if you would ask me when I first played my first hot take, I would have said the opposite. But if you're asking me today, after multiple plays of both games, I'm going to go with Dune on this one. So I'm sending it over to Chris.
Yeah, Dune is definitely thinky. It's challenging. It's a really good puzzle. Arnak for me is also a good puzzle. And when I think of what do I have more fun playing, what would I classify as fun? It's Arnak for me. Dune, you really have to work to get things done. It's a little more of a struggle. That's good, and I enjoy it, but I definitely have more fun playing Arnak. So for that, I have to go with Arnak, which means we have another tie. And before we go to Dave's information here to see how he breaks the tie for the whole darn thing, again, we're sitting here at 10 votes for Dune, 10 votes for Arnak. I will say when I look at David's votes, he voted 3 times for Dune, twice for Arnak. So little boost to Dune. Daniela, you were 3-2 for Arnak. I was 3-2 for Arnak, and Pete, you were 3-2 for Dune. So really close for each of us. Every category was tough, but here we are, the fun factor, 2-2, and we have to go to our tiebreaker, the fifth Meeple Dave, to see where everything falls.
All right. Well, Dave is going to go with Arnak. And his comments are, I like how the theme and the mechanics work together, enabling you to feel like you're really exploring a map and discovering items.
All right, so there you have it, folks. A really, really tight one, a really, really good one, and we expected that because these are 2 really good games. But with the score of 3-2, Lost Ruins of Arnak gains idol status in this Battle of the Funnest.
Well, folks, that brings us to the end of yet another episode of the Fifth Meeple Board Game Podcast. We hope you enjoyed this little expedition of ours, and if you want to get in touch with us, email us at thefifthmeeple@gmail.com or give us a shout out on Facebook or Instagram. Thanks for going on this adventure with us, and next time, may your compass always point true north. See you guys next time.
Bye-bye.
See ya.
See you guys.
Dune Imperium is a 1-to-4 player deck building. Shoot. The search for Jeez Louise. And again, excuse me.
Yeah.
I know your deck's never big enough.
Mine's never big enough. No,
Wait, what are we talking about?
Yeah. Yeah. A big deck and it's pretty tight. Sorry. Hold on. Pretty tight? No, I don't.
Let me know when you're finished.
It's really tight and sometimes okay with
I'm okay with that.
Yeah.